We're dancing with knives and collecting gold teeth. That's right, it's Dead Cells, the Rogue-Lite board game from Scorpion Mask. In this dungeon-delving roguelite co-op adventure, 1 to 4 players journey through a range of biomes, exploring and slashing their way to safety. Over a series of runs, players will fight monsters, collect loot, and acquire cells in order to gain power. If a character dies, the run is over and the players must start over, but they use gained cells to level up abilities. If they can traverse 2 biomes and defeat a boss with all group members intact, they win the run. Setup begins with character selection. Each character board features the character's name and some sick art. A health point tracker, scroll tracks for the boosted abilities. These come in 3 types: survival in green, tactics in purple, and brutality in red. Spaces for equipment cards below, a draw pile to the left, and a discard pile to the right, and an active space for the player to set a card during combat. Place the scroll markers on the first scroll space of each track. The tracks feature abilities, and the abilities to the left of the scroll are considered the active abilities. As the scrolls move along the track, these cumulative bonuses increase the character's power. Place the health token on the 4th heart from the left, meaning a player has 3 health points to start. Players take the combat cards for their character, give them a shuffle, and set the deck face down to the left of the board. They then draw a starting hand of 3 cards. Each player also takes a character aid card, and 1 player takes the first player token. I don't care who it is, I don't care. Quick note, a few of the card decks, the blueprint decks, and the 4 mutation decks should not be shuffled. There's a handy icon in the directions when mentioning these decks. Next, set up the mutation board, annex board, and combat board, leaving space for a biome board. Take the rune cards and set them face down on their listed space of the mutation board. Set the combat round marker next to the combat board, along with a supply of heart, shield, cell, and state tokens nearby. Place the treasure cards on the annex board. Set the 3 upgrade decks and 1 well deck, all unshuffled, close to the mutation board. And set the assembled group marker on the start space of the biome board. We have a prototype, so we'll be using this miniature today. Finally, it's time to set up the first biome for the run. Each game of Dead Cells features multiple runs, and unlike most co-op games, when a player dies, the game doesn't end just that run. Players can spend acquired resources, cells in this case, to upgrade their abilities for future runs. A team's first few runs start at the Prisoner's Quarters biome, so we'll take the matching board and blueprint cards, setting them unshuffled on the middle space of the annex board, monster cards separated and shuffled by type, standard and elite, and placed on the annex board, and shuffled Prisoner's Quarters tiles, placed face down onto the spaces of the biome board. Return any leftover tiles to the box. And now we're ready to start a run. Gameplay occurs in runs, each divided into 3 repeating steps. Move the group marker to a new space on the biome board. That tile is flipped and resolved. If the group is alive, repeat these steps. If the group is dead, end the run. Okay, let's look at each step in more detail. First up, move the group. The group decides on a course of action. Since this is co-op, all players should try and agree, but the first player token holder is the ultimate decision maker in this step. The marker may be moved to a connected space in the direction of any of the arrows on the path and may not skip over spaces. Some corridors are blocked with the rune symbol, which the players must have before they can pass. Next, in the flip the tile step, one of 5 types of tiles might be resolved: chests, doors, merchants, encounters, and elite encounters. Chests provide treasure and bonuses, while doors lead to unexpected results. Icons here include passing the first player marker clockwise to the next player. Treasure, which provides one treasure card for one character. These might include equipment cards, which I'll explain in more detail shortly. Blueprints, which allow the player to take the bottom card from the blueprint deck and place it on the collector space of the mutations board. More on this shortly. Scroll, which moves one character's scroll one space on their track. Food, which recovers damage on the health track. Cell or gold tooth tokens, which are added to the group's bag. Runes, which allow the rune to be flipped on the mutations board and is now unlocked for the game. And a check. Checks come in two types, hand checks and deck checks. To resolve a hand check, the indicated player must either discard a combat card from their hand with the relevant icon to pass the check. If they cannot, then they may reveal the top card of their combat deck. If that card has the icon, they pass the check. Otherwise, they fail. In the case of a pass, if it's a standard check, the first player gains the reward indicated. Or in the case of a corridor check, the group gains passage through the next space. Failure means neither of these effects occur, and in some cases, players may receive a penalty. The second type, deck checks, forces the first player to reveal the top card of their combat deck. If the relevant icon is present, they gain a reward listed. Otherwise, they gain nothing. In either case, the card is discarded. Also, players always refill their hand to 3 cards after performing checks. Back to the tile types. Merchant tiles allow the player to spin gold tooth tokens to gain rewards listed. Pretty simple. Again, players make this choice as a group, but the first player has the final say. Encounter tiles, both normal and elite, introduce the combat section of the game. Encounter tiles will feature monsters or elite monsters and loot. For each icon, players draw a card from the relevant deck and place it on the combat board. Monsters are placed in the same order they appear on the tile, left to right. They're placed on the board starting on the leftmost space to the right of the group, unless its card has one of these icons, which might alter its placement. Loot is placed on the group space of the combat board. If it's a treasure, draw the top card of the treasure deck and put it there. Combat is divided into 3 combat rounds, indicated by the 3 lines on the combat board. Let's take a closer look at the board, which has a round indicator on the left, the group space for the characters, monster spaces for the monster cards, a wall space, which will be used in certain combats, and a round end space. And the combat cards, which have a name and sick art, a check icon, 3 round lines which provide an action on each round. These also have a range on the far right of each line. Monster cards have a name and scary art, a health value, and 3 round lines with actions just like the characters. However, they may also have a 4th line which triggers if the monster is still alive at the end of combat, and a space for the reward or penalty for killing the monsters. Before the first round of combat, players are given a brief preparation phase. During this short time, they can discuss strategy, like target priorities and things like that, but they cannot discuss the icons on their cards in hand. Then, players will submit 3 cards total, regardless of the player count. The first player chooses a card, places it face down on the active space of their board, and announces one of the actions on that card and which combat round it will occur in. That's it. That's all they can say. Players then clockwise submit a card in the same manner. In a 4-player game, 1 player will have to pass. They reveal the top card of their combat deck, and if it has a scroll icon, they gain 1 scroll movement on that track. The card is then discarded. Once 3 combat cards have been placed, the rounds are resolved. Combat takes place from left to right on the combat board. If there's no monster in the leftmost space, the group goes first. Beginning with the first player and proceeding clockwise, players perform the round action on their chosen card. Note that range dictates which monsters are targetable for each action. Let's look at some of the actions. Damage deals 1 damage token onto the monster card. Once their health is met or exceeded by damage, they're killed and removed from the board. Any rewards are placed into the player's bag, unless it's a blueprint which goes on the mutations board. Skill activates any one skill on the character's board to the left of the scroll, or on any equipment. Loot allows the player to take all of one type of item on the group space of the combat board and add it to their bag. Any unlooted items at the end of combat are lost. States can inflict penalties or boons, bleeding, poison, shield, etc. Check the player aid for details on each. Combat continues through the 3 rounds, even if the monsters have been killed, which means poison still inflicts damage and players still have a chance to loot. At the end of each round, the round end actions occur. 1 damage to each combatant with poison, and move any monsters closer to the group. If any monsters remain at the end of the 3rd round, after poison damage, any monster or character with bleeding is killed and removed from the board. Then, any monsters with a round 4 icon perform their action. Once combat is finished, loot from the group's bag is distributed to characters. Unkilled monsters and unlooted items are discarded, and players draw back up to a hand of 3 cards. And that's the basics of combat. Let's look at a few other mechanics of the game. Death. Anytime a character hits 0 health, they're dead, and the run is over. However, characters can still spend acquired cells to become stronger for the next run. When a death occurs, players discard all items in the group's bag except the cells. All equipment cards are discarded and shuffled into the equipment deck, and all scrolls are reset to their starting space. Cells can be spent to gain improvement cards from the upgrade deck, such as permanent mutations, which provide an effect for the whole group, improved combat cards, and instruction cards, which alter the game when followed. Players can also throw 1 cell into the mysterious well, which provides an unknown effect. Ooh. Equipment cards provide characters with extra actions or special abilities. Characters have 1 open slot at the start of the game and must discard anything in that slot if they wish to use new equipment. They come in 3 types: weapons, skill-related items, and specials. The mutation board saves the game's progress between runs. Runes are kept here, along with the start of game bonuses, new abilities, and more. Cards here are saved even in between play sessions. And that's the basics of Dead Cells. I'm Becca Scott, this is Good Time Society, and I gotta go get this baby out of me. I shouldn't even be here. I'm on maternity leave. See ya. There we go. I don't want him to see my pants, because they're pajama pants, okay?